Gloria, welcome to Dominate Your Day podcast. It was so fun meeting you this week in Dallas when you came up to Dallas for our panel discussion on accelerating women's well-being. And now we're going to go deep with your amazing experience in the medical field. And I can't wait for our audience to get to know you. So, Gloria, you became a doctor and then you got into research and gynecology. You were a gynecologist, but you also studied cancer and cervical cancer. How did you become a doctor? What was the nemesis for that? Who was the one that got you excited about medical field? Was there somebody, a friend, a family member?
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here first. It's an honor to be with you and
Oh,
to have been in Dallas with you. Thank you very much. Had a great time there.
yeah.
That's an interesting question. I decided I wanted to become a doctor when I was 15, when I was in high school back in Argentina. That's where I'm from. And at that time, if you ask me why do you want to study to be a doctor, always said because I want to help people. I keep
Mm,
repeating the same thing. And there was one biology teacher called Stella, and Stella believed that I could be a doctor. I had no family, any family member that was a physician, but she was like, "Oh, that's great. Why don't you start reading biology and this book and this other book?" And I fall in love with it. I'm like, "This is what I want to do." That's what I did.
wow, and you did it. And that is, we talk a lot on this podcast about difference makers that want to make an impact and really finding your authentic self. And I love your story because you got your degree in Argentina, you came to Houston and did some training under some great doctors, and then decided and came back and got married and then got into research. But
Yes,
now you've kind of done a pivot.
I
So
know.
tell the audience what you're doing now and why you've pivoted.
I think one thing brought me to the other, and I think the moving to the US was part of that without me knowing at all. You know, life is very interesting. There are some, I don't know, things that we never thought about and that happen. And then you should allow that to happen because it's usually for a good reason. So when I moved here, when you move from another country to the US and you want to continue or become an MD, your degree doesn't work right away. You have to go through several tests, name steps. And after that, you had to do your residency all over again. Residency is a very hard program, a training program that takes several years, 4 to 5, 5 to me
Oh,
back
wow.
home. And I'm like, I started studying and I love studying. But for some reason, I said, no, 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 I'm not doing this again. And I studied, what can I do? Because I really love this. And I came across research and I'm like, at the beginning, I was like, okay, because this was not something I was doing. In the US, there are a lot of resources for research that are not available in other places in the world. So I started and I fall in love with it. And I wrote a lot of, they're up there, chapters in medical books and several, many articles, usually on cervical cancer. That's how I started. And then I moved into a very specific tumor that's called neuroendocrine cervical carcinomas, a very rare, very aggressive illness. And I've been doing that for the past 10 years.
Wow.
Yes.
And
And
now
one thing
it
brought
led
me
to
to the
another,
other.
right? And so then what happened in your research? What were you finding that you thought was a gap when you started researching?
So when I was doing research, I was the one entering the patient's information into the database. And my boss was like, do you want to continue doing that or should we hire someone to do that? I'm like, no, I want to continue doing that because when I read, a lot of things come to my head as a starting point for research. And in the last years, I started seeing like, wow, when I read another doctor's note, I'm not the one writing them, I'm reading. I'm like, how little do we know about the person behind the illness? Or nothing. Oftentimes, there's no information. And other times, when there was something, I'm like, oh, look at these women went through this and that, and few times that was written. And this is interesting. And it started like becoming some, let's say, discomfort inside me, because I was like, there's something that we're not looking at. Uh,
Mm.
how little do we know about the person? And so then I started, I don't know, like connecting the dots with things that had happened as a physician before. And I always remember I had a patient that I'm in contact with her family still. She had a very unusual thing, an ovarian cancer at a very young age, 23 years of age. And yeah, this is very rare. So in one of, we treated her, the tumor had progressed and disease progressed, and she ended up dying. And I remember the mom writing me a letter one day, like, Gloria, I want you to read this. So I read it, and she was asking a lot of questions. Would this that happened to my child in childhood, and it was sexual abuse for many many years, do you think this could be related to her illness?
Mm.
At that time I'm like, well, I cannot say yes or no, but I was not trained on any of these things, and that was not part of, in med school, never saying, okay, maybe trauma, maybe what had happened to you may have an impact, or how the immune system could have been impacted by things that happened to you. So, but I still have that letter. And when I started with all of this, I'm like, okay, is this patient, this other one? I started like recalling a lot of little moments as a doctor. And I'm like, okay, I'm remembering this for a reason. There must be a connection. And so here I am. That's,
Wow.
yeah.
Now you've decided to become a coach and work with women on their health. But you also have done something really interesting that you just mentioned that you didn't get training for in medical school, which you went out and got the training for. And that's compassionate inquiry, right? Learning
Yes.
how to really look at the whole body and the whole person, not just at the illness.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I said in the last years I started like feeling this kind of uncomfort
Mhm.
inside, and started looking at this research from a different perspective, I'm like, there's something else I want to do. There's some other way I want to be with women. And women have been and are my passion, so I do this for women. Maybe that's because I became a gynecologist.
Yes.
And I'm like, what is it? It was like, and I was like, but what is it that I want to do? And I came across life coaching, and I didn't know much about it, but I found this Jay Shetty, and I'm like, okay, he looks like a very nice human.
Mm-hmm.
Let's train with him. And I did the training, and I was certified as a life coach. And that was the first time I heard about trusting the process, allowing the process, believe in the client. Like, everyone can heal. And so I'm like, yes, this makes sense. I can start doing something. I created a company that's called Return to Wholeness, because wholeness as a whole, that is what we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are complete. But we
Mm-hmm.
live in a toxic society that sometimes make that a little hard to remember. And after that, I started seeing, when I started working with women, that okay, I started working with women with chronic illnesses, from obesity, autoimmune diseases, even cancer. I'm like, I need more. I need to learn more. I want to help. So let's see. And I love reading. And I came across Gabor Mate, and that was the first time I've heard an MD, just like me, older in age, with a lot more experience, but an MD talking about other things, talking about wholeness, talking about chronic illnesses in a different way, connecting chronic illness to childhood trauma, to things that happen, to the environment that we live in. And I'm like, Yes. You know, when you feel inside, this
Mhm.
sounds so right. And
Mhm.
so I started training on compassion inquiry, which is a therapeutic approach created by Gabor Mate and Saddaram, is another physician. And I trained with them for a year in a professional training on this approach that like opened a lot of understanding of chronic illness on chronic illnesses and how to go into the body and start the healing from there. And came across all these other people talking about trauma and different modalities as Bessel, Van der Kolk, and the body keeps the score, and Peter Levine talking about trauma. So yes, it has been a beautiful journey. It's
Mm.
a journey still because there's always more to learn and do.
But you're finding your calling, and I think that's what we want. I mean, that is because when you're in your most authentic self is when you can just naturally do the things you were made to do. And it's probably like all what you shared in your story from the time you were 15, you've had this calling, you just didn't know how it was going to evolve. And you probably be the kind of person right now to help others and work through compassionate inquiry, and also with the research background and your your gynecology background, it just brings a nice package and a unique package to your clients. So I love how you're using the word return to wholeness,
Hmm.
because it is a return. And
Yes.
I think so many, you mentioned this and we've talked about it, but so many of us have said, well, we're sick, we got to go to the doctor, we got to get some medicine. But what you're saying is something's going on. Let's go have a couple of sessions and
Yeah.
figure out what is going on and where it started. Is that kind of how you like to start your practice? And if somebody were interested in getting compassion inquiry on something that a trauma or something that they dealt with, is that how it would work?
Yeah, I'm still finding a word because coaching, that's what got certified on, but I'm like, I don't know. I should call it some, I don't know. I have a hard time with the name because it comes to mind like a finance coach or a sport coach. I'm like,
Mhm.
I, but I don't know what other word to use so far. So for now, let's call it like that. Coaching with a mix of compassion inquiry and uh, a mix of me, right?
Mhm.
Because uh, we all bring our uniqueness and our authentic self, as you said, to the table. And I
Mhm.
bring mine, and the client bring theirs, and so it's very unique to what the other person is looking for, and what the other person is available to do,
Mhm.
and where do they want to go, and how deep or how far. And so we start like knowing each other. So I usually, there's an entire free session, an hour and a half, whatever is needed, because the client has to feel, they have to feel like they feel safe enough,
Mhm.
and they feel okay. This is not about, you know, about anything else but them. So this is their space to go. And when they have a chronic illness, or sometimes it's just a chronic symptom, a symptom that has been going on for a long time, and sometimes there's no one disease diagnosed yet. Sometimes it takes a long time for some of them. um, or sometimes it's just an uncomfortness in life, and so let's open a space for that, and
Mm.
let's see what happens. Let's take the time to be with yourself, and what can we learn from that. And oftentimes we can use the illness as a start point.
Mm.
What you know I was in a conference, in compassion inquiry conference in Romania in 2024, and one of the speakers was a patient. She was a transplant patient, and she has this chronic illness since she was a child. But then she was telling her story, and I was sitting there in the audience. And as I said, to me, when I decided to become a doctor, if you ask why, I would very proudly say, because I want to help people. And I said that for years because there was no other thing. Nobody made me study that. I didn't want anything else but willing to help people from when I decided that. But I was listening to her, and she had such a horrible experience in the MD world, right? Someone
Mhm.
that has been to the hospital and has several surgeries, and her life has been inside this medical world. And I couldn't stop having tears down my cheeks because I'm like, but that's not why we study medicine. That's not why we become, that is not what we wanted to do. And I
Mhm.
now feel sad when I think about it because, and then I have to go and talk to her. I'm like, "I- I'm sorry. That was never the intention." But she said I was not seen, not heard. No, nobody asked me what was going on in my life. And
Mm.
yeah, and I learned from her something I use sometimes with clients. It's like, can we do like a timeline?
Mhm.
When did you start feeling symptoms, or when were you diagnosed? Sometimes we compare that medical line with a life event line or things. And sometimes even them, they're like, oh my God, I never realized that one thing. And it
Mm.
makes a lot of sense because stress, we know, is so related to our immune system, and it impacts our immune system um, in ways that, of course, it makes sense to weaken the immune system when we are under chronic stress. I'm not saying the stress to like a lion is
Mm.
chasing me and I have to run. There's a raise on cortisol, and that's normal. But when you are constantly under stress, that's a different thing. So,
So let me ask you about that because, ironically, I was at the doctor this week and we were talking about cortisol, and she said, once that cortisol is released from stress, it doesn't leave your body quickly. It stays in your body.
mhm,
That's what causes a lot of heart disease and, as you said, autoimmune disease. And so sometimes you might not even know that you're stressed because you've just been doing work as women, feeding your family, doing all the things you do, all the responsibilities, and you're loving what you do, but you might be stressed. So what do you recommend for women to kind of slow down? And I know each person's going to be different based on what they've gone through and their past and all that, but it just seems like it's something I don't hear much about. When she told me that, I was like, why aren't people talking about this?
hmm,
I was putting together what you had told me last week, that there's this huge rise in autoimmune diseases with women all of a sudden. And then she was saying, yeah, watch your cortisol levels because that's the stress and that can hang on and cause other health issues. And you're like, what? So I'm curious about that.
yeah. You say something when you mention women doing all these things. When we think about women, it's like women are at the center of something, of everything, right? Women are mothers or daughters or in-laws. We are professionals. We work. Uh, you are at the center of everything. If I think at my house, my husband cannot find a thing. It seems that we've been living the same place for a long time. So you are always putting others first.
Mhm,
Always. That is, I don't know. I don't know where that inside us came from, but that's how we usually behave and are. And
mhm.
culture doesn't help. And so
No.
women tend to put others first all the time. Women tend to not have time or create that time or space for them for anything because there's always someone else too. Women
Mhm,
has a lot of repressed healthy anger because it's not, we are supposed to be nice, we're supposed to smile, we're supposed to be
mm,
balanced and keep everyone happy around us. Well, all those things are stressors to the body, and all those things can definitely impact in our health. There's no question about that. And you mentioned what can we do. Maybe we cannot change the world, we cannot change society, unfortunately, although maybe people are becoming more aware of this, or we are advocating more for that, maybe. I hope. Uh,
Yeah.
but again, we cannot change the entire system, but maybe just the awareness of all of this. When you become
Mhm.
aware of things, it's just the first little big step to start the healing process.
Mm.
Just be aware of your feelings or how you're feeling. I'm tired, I'm feeling this or that on my body, I'm getting this diagnosed, I'm getting these symptoms. Or I just pause and I'm like, how am I today? How am I feeling with my life?
Mhm.
Awareness.
Yeah, and I think that's something we're not used to doing, right? We're just go, 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 go. And I was looking at your strengths: achiever, connectedness, love your learner, and your empathy. Your empathy, like
Mhm.
describing that story of the woman sharing her story, and you just had the tears coming down. I love how you can probably feel what your patients are feeling because you have that empathy talent. But then
Hmm.
you've got this intellection talent, which is let me go research that. Let me figure out what's going on. And when you described how you were doing your research and you wanted to go ahead and input the information because you wanted to see what else was going on out there and if there was a pattern. And so that is so amazing. But I love when we talk about strengths and you can always see them and when you're in your energy and that empathy and that intellection working together. So, as you're building your practice and creating this space, and now you're getting asked to come speak to all these medical conferences about this, right? Because doctors aren't trained in this, and it's like, how do we know what our patients are going through, or how do we even ask them?
Yeah.
Is that what's going on? Is it kind of like they want to know, but they're like, oh, how do we bring awareness to our patients,
Yeah.
to ourselves as a doctor during this time?
That I don't know what patients think that we are trained on how they teach us. That would be very interesting to because very interesting to know. And I know I'm from Latin America, but I've been living here. My husband is a physician in the US. We go, and I've been going for medical conference, doing with my research around the world, so I kind of know physicians, gynecologists always, but around the world. And the training is quite similar when we talk about Western medicine. It's pretty similar in terms of we are not trained in so many areas to look at another person as a whole. That is real. That's not the case in some Ayurveda medicine or Chinese ancient medicine. They look at their medicine is different, but we are not trained on that. We're trained on, like, very specific, very, this is my organ or my, and we don't. And I'm not saying doctors have to do that necessarily. I understand there's no time. I am very aware of how the health system works. Not only here, everywhere. You have your little minutes, and you have to take care
Mhm.
of a patient that's coming to you with an issue. But maybe I would love for doctors to know and to be more aware that there are people willing to help, and
Mhm.
that we can complement what
Mhm.
they're doing. It's not taking one thing from them or everything, or now patients had to stop doing. No, the illness is real, the pain is real, anything that is going on is real. But maybe for these chronic conditions, it could be great to just have somebody else helping, or
Just
recommending, or I don't know, just allow patients to seek other things to help.
it would be so cool in the future. I've told you I had a friend going through cancer right now. Actually, I have two,
Mm.
and just have part of that team is somebody that can be helping with the compassion inquiry through all that.
Yeah.
Uh, Whether they're, and I let's talk a minute about that and talk to us about healing an illness, not curing an illness.
Yeah, you can cure, you eradicate a disease from the body, and there are many of them that are potentially you can cure, and especially the acute ones. But sometimes when you have, let's say, autoimmune diseases, or nowadays many cancers that are treated and patients go into remission, and then the cancer becomes this chronic illness, if you wish. You keep going to your doctor, you have your scans done, and if it recurs, there's always another option, other treatment options, and you keep patients are alive for longer time than they used to for many, many cancers. And so sometimes it's just, okay, we're not pretending to cure. If that happens, amazing. But some chronic illnesses are not, don't fall into that category. And we can heal other things. We can heal whatever had happened to you. And Gabor has a beautiful definition of trauma. These big traumas that can be like physical, sexual abuse, or those small traumas that could be just neglect while
Mhm.
raising a kid, for example, right? And so all this trauma, the definition that he has, I love it, because it's not what happened to you, but what happened inside you
Mm,
because of what happened to you. That wound you carry. And like as any wound that is not healed, every time you touch it, it's painful. And
mm,
so healing can be heal that. And even if the scar remains there, but it's getting, better, and it doesn't hurt so much, and you don't. And this goes with working on limiting beliefs that we may have, that we carry from
mhm,
early childhood. Definitely things that happen, big T's or small T's, any of those. Um, and so giving the space to heal and know who we are, and you mentioned the word authentic self.
mhm,
That's a beautiful thing, because we create who we are since we are born. I mean, I was born a girl, okay, they put me Gloria as a name. um, I was born, this is my real story. When I was born, my grandmother got cancer and died 2 months before I was born. So I'm
oh,
sure for my mom was not a very nice pregnancy. She has lost a baby the year before during the delivery. So I'm sure when I came to this world, I didn't come with a mother. I was very connected, not because she didn't want to, not because she didn't love me, but because things were hard for them. So I became this child that always wanted to be perfect, perfect daughter, perfect student, perfect, never bring a problem,
mhm,
always smile. I love smiling. I always thought it was like part of me. And maybe this is part of the person I construct for myself, the person I believe I am, and maybe I am not. So I had to go through a lot of work on myself, and I'm still, because I still have all these coping mechanisms that, yes, they help me through
mhm,
life, but sometimes they become a burden.
mhm,
So I was not aware of any of this until I started working and doing compassion inquiry of myself, not me, but like having and doing therapy and all of that. And so, oh, what a relief. So becoming to that authentic you, and working every day on doing that, on knowing and allowing that, and loving all of you, that's
mhm.
very hard too. um, it's an important thing, and it's a beautiful relief.
It's so neat that you were able to share that story and share how, I think they say everybody has something in their childhood and they don't know they're carrying that around. And it
Yeah.
doesn't get to we get older and we're doing something like you. For you, is probably just doing the research and going deep and saying, oh, what happened to me when I was little? Or
Mhm.
see behaviors that we've had that we carried from that childhood and that we're keeping, and patterns we're keeping that we don't really need to keep. But it's
Yeah.
because we haven't done that deep work you're talking about.
And they're beautiful because they brought us here.
Mhm,
So they were, I don't know, let's say coping mechanisms. They brought us to
mhm,
where we are now, but maybe we can let them go a little bit, and just be aware of them, to like, okay, I don't want to be trapped in that. because now I'm a 42-year-old Gloria that is
Mhm.
different.
Mm.
And yeah, so that's part of healing.
And it goes back to, you were mentioning the other book, The Body Keeps the Score, which,
Mhm.
and you mentioned the wounds and the wounds that are inside of us that we don't heal, that we don't even know are probably in there. And so, what I hear the work you're doing is around helping people figure out what that is and then releasing that and healing from whatever they're going through by doing that work. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You cannot change what happened to you, but you can change. Um, you can heal from what happened to you, and
Uh-huh.
that will go a long way in illnesses, in joy, if you wish, in be at peace with oneself.
Mhm.
Right? And it's not uncommon. We know the numbers. WHO says there's like 1 in 3 women worldwide suffer like physical or sexual abuse.
Horrible.
That's that's a big number.
That is a
Numbers are as big in the United States, for example. And so,
1 in 3 women have suffered some kind of sexual abuse or,
yes,
oh,
and oftentimes women have are abused in their by an intimate partner. So that's also a lot of women are living a situation of abuse in their own household, and I am sure numbers. I'm sure they're less than the reality because it's very hard for women to just go and go to the police and report all of this for various reasons, lots of reasons. And
mm,
so there's a lot of that I'm not saying that is a direct or like every time a woman has whatever illness that means, no, I'm not saying that at all, but this is so prevalent that is so frequent to find when you start going when you start digging deep into things just because of the prevalence that it has. So
mm.
yeah.
And I love how you see this space and there's a gap here and you're filling that gap with helping women and helping them heal themselves with and how you talked about you can't change what happened to you, but you can heal from what happened to you. Such a high calling and such a way to make an impact and such a way for women to look at themselves differently when they're going through the healing process. So I could talk to you for hours about this, but I know we have to go here soon. Can you just let me know right now, as you're thinking about all this, Gloria, is there anything that I didn't ask you or that you want to share that you want to make sure our audience hears today?
Hmm. I think you asked me great questions and we talked about the most important things. Of course, there's always a lot more to talk about, but we're women. We love going deep into things,
Yes.
which I love. Um, I would say that healing is available for everyone. No matter how much you feel you are broken,
Mm,
or no matter what had happened to you, that you're like, no, this is impossible. There's no possibility for me to heal. No, there always is. Believe me, this is something I truly feel and believe. There's that is available to everyone.
mm,
It might be hard sometimes to go through the process because when you start connecting things on bringing to your consciousness things that were most likely unconscious to you before, it might be hard at times. It's hard, but the relief, the peace that you encounter after the process, it's beautiful.
mm.
So that's a possibility that is there for everyone.
That's an outcome, a great outcome from this, right?
I
Peace.
think so. So it's
Mm,
not about curing an illness, but maybe we can use the illness to go deeper
mm,
into something else,
mm,
um, that might has been going on, that might be going on, and we can live with the chronic illness
I love
at
that. I
peace,
love
at ease.
mm. Well, thank you, Gloria. This is such great information, and I love your passion for it. I just feel it over the connection today, over the recording. I just feel it. And when you spoke last week to audience of women, it just came so clear. You always had your hand on your heart, and I thought, oh, she's got empathy. She gets this. She feels them. So thank you for creating that safe space for women to heal. And if people want to get a hold of you, is the best way? What is the best way for them to find you?
Um, Through my website, or
Mhm.
there's a link for my Calendly there. As I said, I'm very happy to meet an hour and a half, whatever is available to you, half an hour, wherever you can. Absolutely free, just to get to know each other and connect. And let's see if I might be a fit for whatever you're looking for. And if not, maybe I can recommend someone else, or some modality or book or whatever is it that may help to start the process.
Well, thank you for being a difference maker. Thank you for offering that. That's such a nice gift to people that are watching today, to be able to know they can do that, and that you can come. And we'll put all your information in the show
Thank
notes.
you.
That is Return to Wholeness. Is that correct?
ReturnToWholeness.com. Yeah.
And
Beautiful.
that's the best way to find Gloria. Just thank you, Gloria. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being here. Thank you for dropping some great gold nuggets for our audience today. And I can't wait to hear from the audience on how this has helped you as well. So thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
And thank you for your what you're doing for women.
Oh,
Yes, and women supporting women. I love that.
that's
Just
right.
thank you.
You.